Good evening and welcome to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Carolyn Ward and I'm stepping in this evening for Gabrielle Martin and very happy to be back. Tonight, I got to choose who I'd like to sit down and have a chat with. And the first thing that came to my mind was a book that I was given by a friend many years ago, and it was called If Nuns Ruled the World. And I thought, yeah, I wonder what that would be like. Let's dive in, not about ruling the world, but the idea of nuns has changed so much over the last number of years, decades really, from when I was growing up and had hankerings to be Audrey Hepburn in the Nun story, except for the tragic end. And so I thought it would be really interesting to sit down with some women who are living dedicated spiritual lives of service. And what does it look like today? And so we've got three, I think, amazing women on tonight's program. And because of time zones and because of the way the world is today, I had to sit down a little earlier in the week with a couple of them. Marianne from Costa Rica is currently sleeping, and Pia, who's in Taiwan, could have sat with us, but not at this time. So as much as it would have been lovely to be live, I have many feelings of gratitude for Zoom and the ability to travel all over the world and bring people from everywhere. So what we're going to do is we're first going to meet Pia. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about Pia. She'll tell you a bit more about herself. But she doesn't call herself a nun. And even though she has been ordained as a novice at different times, she's not currently kind of living a monastic life, though that is what she liked to be called. She was born in Messina, Italy. Her name is Pia Giammasi. In 1964, and she grew up in the United States. After graduating from the University of Massachusetts, with a degree in legal studies, she went to Asia to seek the wisdom of the East. After having formally entered into Buddhist training in Nepal and India, she was assigned to teach at a small Buddhist center in Hong Kong by the Dalai Lama. It was there that she met Master Nun Huai Chin in early 1989, and he became her first and most important teacher. He encouraged her to go and learn and study Chinese medicine, which she did do and graduated. Many things in between, and she worked with him many times and became a fluent translator in Chinese. And in fact, in today's session, we're going to begin our session together. And she's going to chant the Buddhist Heart Sutra as a way of taking us into her practice. So please enjoy Pia. She works these days as a healer. She works with music. She teaches Buddhist Dharma teachings. Her life is her Dharma path. You're going to love her. She's fabulous. So enjoy.
Okay, so般若波罗蜜多心经观自在菩萨行深般若波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄舍利子。色不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空即是实，受想行识亦复如是。舍利子，是诸法空相，不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减，是故空中无实无受善行识，无眼而闭塞，是你有是三相为除法。无眼界乃至无意识界，无明亦无明尽，乃至无老死亦无老死尽，无苦集灭道，无智亦无得，亦无所得故。 菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多故，心无挂碍，无挂碍故，有恐怖远离颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃三世诸佛依般若波罗蜜多故。得阿耨多罗三藐三菩提故，知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒，是大明咒，是无相咒，是无等等咒。能除一切苦，真实不虚，故说般若波罗蜜多咒，即说咒曰：嘎忒嘎忒帕拉嘎忒，帕拉僧嘎忒菩提说阿嘎忒嘎忒帕拉嘎忒，帕拉僧嘎忒菩提说阿嘎忒嘎忒帕拉嘎忒，帕拉僧嘎忒菩提说哈。So I just recited the Heart Sutra in Chinese, and it's a practice I do every morning or sometime during the day at least, but normally in the morning. And it's the sutra, it's a very central sutra that talks about the connection between emptiness or potential and manifestation. And so how everything is both comes from the emptiness, the potential of all, the potential of everything to grow from the original source. So it's the fact that we are never disconnected from source. Everything comes from and is one with source. So that's I guess it's the heart of the Buddhist teachings.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Pia, so much. It's a very powerful thing to remember every day, right? That
yes,
in any moment, anything can be born and is trying to be born. Something's trying to be born at every moment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So very warm welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to be with us in what I feel is a really special session of Youniverse, because this week I'm sitting in for Gabrielle, which I've already mentioned, but we're looking at how women in a contemporary time are exploring a life of dedicated service and spirituality, which some are formally called nuns or monks or monastics, and others maybe don't name it as that, but live that lifestyle. And so we're just exploring. And so, Pia, thank you very much. Maybe you can tell us, first of all, your name is Pia Giammasi. Is that how I pronounce it? Yeah. So it's not Tibetan, even though you just did something in Chinese. And you grew up in the States, though, is that right?
I was born in Italy and I grew up in the States. And after university, I left for Asia to follow a spiritual path. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to lead us into our question. So we've had a little bit of a conversation before, so I know a bit about you. But for people who are watching now, I find your journey very inspiring. You've been monastic and layperson in more than one tradition, and now you continue as a dedicated teacher within the Buddhist way of things. So can you take us back to the beginning of your path and share a moment or realization that ignited your deep connection to Buddhism and set you on this profound journey of spiritual service and teaching?
Oh, it was a very early moment, actually. It was probably in primary school, second grade, when the series Kung Fu came on with David Carradine. And when Grasshopper would go to his teacher, and his teacher would not only test him and teach him martial arts, but also he would open his wisdom, open his heart, open his mind. And at that point, I decided I want to find a teacher to open my wisdom. And so I started saving money to go to come to Asia to find a teacher of great wisdom.
Wow, that's wonderful. And did you find your teacher of great wisdom?
I found many teachers of great wisdom, but a very deep connection with one particular teacher, actually. Yeah. Even though when I first, my first Buddhist teacher was of the Dzogchen tradition in to Tibetan tradition, and it's very Zen-like, and that was Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. He was, I met him, I went to his teachings in Nepal, and that was the start of the path. But my deepest connection was with a Chinese, and longest connection was with a Chinese master named Nan Huaijin, Master Nan Huaijin. He was a lay teacher, but he was also, he was the holder of several lineages and was verified as an enlightened master by the Hutuko of Mongolia. He's like Tibetan master of Mongolia, by a Chan master, or the Chinese word for Zen, Chan master in Chinese Chan master. And also, I think when he was in Tibet, he was also verified as enlightened by other teachers. So great master, and not very well known in the West.
I'm sitting here and I go, oh, I want to delve into that, because I find it so interesting when you say he was the holder of a number of lineages. I go, wow, which ones? How do we know? What did they mean? And, I want to go there, but I'm coming back to you. And maybe we'll get together for another conversation. But so your journey has taken you beyond the traditional monastic setting, though. And your dedication to teaching and sharing Buddhism and Buddhist wisdom remains unwavering. It's your grasshopper lineage. How do you find harmony between your personal Dharma path and the role of a teacher? And how has this unique balance enriched your understanding of spiritual service?
For me, my life is my practice. I don't separate between practice and other things. Teaching is practice. Eating is practice. Being with friends is practice. Because spiritual cultivation is in your every action. So what are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing with you? What is your motivation when you're speaking to people? Or, like when you're doing things, looking back on yourself and how can I do things better? So for me, I don't see a separation, but it's good to step out of the role of teacher every now and then and go back to being a student, or just practicing, or just stepping out of that role, because that role can things kind of take their own course. And sometimes you do, you don't realize that you're getting stuck. So it is important to step back. So my life has been, in front of the people, and then stepping out and moving into something else where I can learn and I can move forward and I have more to give. So as a teacher, as I evolve, as I grow and understand and integrate things, and then if I'm not ready to bring that into teaching, then I step back from teaching until I can really bring it in. And so it's been a very nice flow, actually.
Beautiful. I remember many years ago, I'd been traveling, teaching a lot. And at one point I thought, I'm so bored with my blah, 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 really. Because where I was going, it was new for everyone that was there, and they were like, oh, wow, this is fabulous. I was so bored, and I thought, I have to stop traveling. And a friend of mine had said to me, you know about the Trappist monks. They have 4 vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience. And then their fourth is stability. Once they enter, they stay in one place. They never leave, generally. And she said, don't you feel like, maybe that would be good for you? And that stayed with me for years. And then when I got bored with my own teaching, nothing new was coming. I thought, no, I have to stop and be where I am and do the work where I am. So I love what you're saying about if it's not ready, it's not baked, if you're still exploring it, it has to have been embodied somehow or integrated before you can lead someone else to it. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. Yeah, because otherwise it's coming from your head, and people know when it comes from your head and when it comes from your heart, your experience, your life, your entire being. They know.
Yeah. That's, yeah. So I have another question. I have many questions, really. But is yours a dedicated singular path? Have you chosen to not be in relationship with someone in a partnership, intimate relationship? Have you chosen a singular life path? I didn't ask you today.
I have been in relationships during parts of the path, and for the most part, it only works if the other person is also a spiritual practitioner.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay, so my third question for you, which is really more than three, but so the one I have written, with the deep roots of your practice and teachings, there's no doubt that you have encountered profound transformation. And can you share a specific instance where your journey took an unexpected turn and it led to a significant shift in your perspective or approach to your own Dharma path and the guidance then you provide to others? Like, one of those ones you go, oh no, and then you go, oh great, that was exactly what I needed.
Yeah. I'll share two. One was a bit more of an internal, that my entire perspective on a lot of things shifted. It was 1989, and I was with another nun. We were learning Chinese medicine in mainland China. And in mainland China, there are 4 very important mountains. They're called Bodhi Mandalas. And we went to Wutai Shan, which is Wutai Mountain, which is the Bodhi Mandala of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And it's called Wutai because there's 5. Wu is 5, so there's 5 different peaks with temples on them, and they're or holy places. So at that point, the transportation was not very good, and we had to walk to most of them. It was still very rustic at that point. And as we were walking to the central peak, Qing Zhen Shi went ahead. She was kind of like feeling like she didn't want to. She wanted to just truck on her own. So she went up there. And I was a little bit lost, like, because it's just all mountains, and sometimes you can see the peak and sometimes you can't. And I was a little bit lost, and then at some point, something came over me, and I just had this feeling of this recognition that, or this feeling that, like, I was the only one on this entire planet, on this entire earth, in this whole world, who was not enlightened. And everything and everybody, the entire world was an enlightened state, or was an enlightened manifestation to bring me to an awakening. It was so deep and so profound that, like, I was just stopped in my tracks, and I was just deep in that, I don't know, recognition, whatever. And it was very, very profound. And that was a big shift in seeing the divinity in everything, seeing the sacredness in everything at a like a very deep level. Yeah. And after that experience, yeah, I met a few very interesting characters in the mountain.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to stay with what you've just shared, because it's like all those amazing experiences, like they're so extraordinary and profound, and then you put them in words, and the words can never capture, doesn't matter how brilliant you are. But there was something in what you were sharing that I could feel into it, you know, that really there was this, the whole thing changed, everything became alive in a way that you'd never seen before.
In a way, yes. Yeah, nothing changed and everything changed.
That's very Zen of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if we could live like that, right? Ready to have revealed to us in any moment. Like if we were that attentive, as in aware, to be able to catch. I was walking up here before, and the rabbits were running around, and they play. It's so beautiful. They chase each other around the bush, and it always makes me think of the animated films that they make. And so I imagine they're, running and playing and laughing, but it really is this sense that, the world is not human centric. It's a coexistence of wonder.
Yeah. Yes. And at some level, everything is a manifestation of the divine, of the profound. It's all profound. Inside of that, we fall into our own world of the profane world, or the non-sacred world.
And Pia, as you say, the divine and the sacred, within your teachings and your way, is Buddha nature, is that the sort of source point when you say everything connected to source? So maybe in Christianity they might say God, or in Hinduism it might be Paramatma, or is that what for you is like your directed connection?
Yes, yes. And it's neither outside of us, and it's not just inside of us. It's the all.
Yeah.
And in many Buddhist texts, like in some very important sutras, they even say it may be called God, it may be called, it might be called the highest or the holiest, it may be called this or that, it may be called, so it went through all that. It may be called Buddha nature, it may be called Buddha. But it's all pointed to something beyond words.
Yeah. And don't get hooked in the labels.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. I want to keep talking and asking you questions, and we need to wrap, because I'm going to have now conversations with the others. So I'm going to ask you the 4 questions I'm going to ask each of the guests tonight. So, and maybe you already answered the first one. Do you have a favorite daily ritual?
Yes, in the morning, incense offering. Incense offering, Heart Sutra, meditation, and doing other mantras. So, but at least if I don't have time to do the others, at least just an incense offering. Yeah, that's for 40 something years. I've very dedicated to doing at least, and some other time during the day, the other practices.
What does that mean, an incense offering?
When you make if you have a picture of Buddha, or even just in your mind, and you're offering, you have incense and you offer it, it's just it's a practice of generosity. It's a practice of respecting something greater than the you that is greater than you. the divine that you are part of, but is also, and it's greater than what you are at this point.
That's really beautiful. And anyone could do that really
Yeah,
in their own space, wherever. Just put
absolutely.
that moment. Yeah, beautiful. Do you have a book that you would say significantly influenced your spiritual journey? I mean, probably many.
Yeah, but the very first one that influenced me very deeply was Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. That was the only book with anything Buddhist in the entire library as a child that I could get my hands on to read. So that was very
Great, thank you. Okay, I think you've answered this, but your source of strength. So when you're facing challenges or anything really, what source of strength or mantra or practice do you turn to?
Sometimes mantra, if it's immediate. If it's something more long-term, then I would look in the sutras, the teachings of the Buddha directly. Yes, to look for answers, for inspiration, if my teacher is not available or around.
Okay, good. And if you could share one piece of advice with people who are watching this and aspiring to a life of, spiritual service and dedication, and maybe exactly where they are, not taking up any robes, but what would it be? What would be that piece of advice?
Connect to your heart, and connect your heart to the sacred, to the divine, whatever you call it. Whether you call it Buddha, Bodhisattva, or God, or whatever, universal love, whatever you call it, make a direct connection, because you will have teachers and they may or may not have their own connection. But you must have your own direct connection. That's where your inspiration, that's where your strength, that's where your internal guidance system will come from, to know whether this is right for you, the teacher is right for you, the practice is right for you. Yeah, first connect to your heart, to yourself, then connect that to something higher, which is also you.
Yeah, fabulous. Pia, thank you very much. I look forward to one day meeting you in person and having more conversation. Thank you so very much.
My great pleasure.
Thank you. So I really enjoyed watching that again and listening to the very universal wisdom that sits there in the way that Pia does her sacred spiritual journey. So now I am going to introduce you to someone who was my first intentional guest. And this woman is Margaret Hinchey. She's a religious sister of mercy, and she's based in the Parramatta Sisters of Mercy. Now, I knew Margaret as Sister Monica when I started in primary school. She was my school principal. And I've met Margaret over the years, and I've been amazed at her courage and her pioneering nature to be able to really challenge the sort of mindsets and belief systems that are archaic and really not relevant today. She's someone who is strong in social justice and has led many things in this country around that area. And she studied over in Chicago, her Master's of Theology, and came back and started something called Life Quest, which was about, I think we'll find out more, but about taking spirituality and exploring it rather than the traditional, more dogmatic, institutional way. And her love of the mission of Jesus and social justice, cosmology, ecology, and how all of this connects with the kind of more contemporary interpretations of scripture and theology. She's now in her 80s, I think, and she has just been re-elected, I think, for first time in a while, back to the leadership team, which is really interesting because as we all know, religious institutions are going through change, and how do you lead going forward? So let me ask Margaret to jump on in, and there she is in her home in Oatlands, still very close to Parramatta.
That's right, yes.
Hello, Margaret.
5 minutes away.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, 5 minutes. So it's really lovely to have you. Thank you so much. Can you see everything, hear everything okay?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, yeah. So as I said, we met, caught up I went to a Women in the Catholic Church meeting a long time ago, maybe 30 years ago, when I started my spiritual journey.
Yes, it was that long ago. Goodness me, I can't believe, where are the years going?
I know. But it's interesting, as we came out of the other interview, the conversation with Pia, I'm sure that there are things that were unique and different, but I suspect there are many similarities or things you can resonate with too, yeah?
Definitely, yes. Just perhaps we express them a little differently, but in their essence, I found a number of things that would be similar to how I see it and how I see, or what I call the divine now. And so it was very interesting. And of course, I think in our tradition, the Christian tradition, over the years, we have almost taken on a number of other practices from other religions like Buddhism and Hinduism, and practices and prayer and methods of meditation. So it's been quite a lovely way to, see wider than just your own little tradition,
Yeah. It really, I think the important thing is to find things that, as you say, methodologies or practices that actually work to make you feel closer to your own true essence and closer to the divine. And if that happens to come from whatever tradition, it feels like, I think for some people it's like betrayal. I'm betraying the path, but actually if it takes me closer to what my path is for, it's a good thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
So let's go into, I've got 3 questions for you in the same way I have for the others. And
this is just reversal. I used to have the questions for you.
That's right. But I used to have to put my hand up. You don't have to.
You were a good student.
So I want to ask you how old you were when you entered the convent, and where was that? What was it that made you choose this life?
Well, it's hard to believe it, but I was 17.
Wow.
I had left school the previous year. I had 6 months before I entered, and then I entered. And at age 17, as many of us in our talking and laughing about our history, our past, say, we really wonder whether our vows were valid. Did we really understand what we were doing? And probably
at 17.
I had sort of 2.5 to 3 years before I took my vows, because that was all the time you had to prepare and find out and learn, and is this for me or is it not? But, I was 21 when I took my vows, and it's not. And in that time, there hadn't been a lot of experience of life, So, yeah, so that was, so that's what happened. That's when it happened, But it's a funny thing, because I had always felt I wanted to do this. And when you put this question about, what made you do it and so on, and I think I have always had, from the time I was a little child, a little girl, I was interested in God. I know it was probably partly from my family, lovely, loving family, but I knew it just interested me. It intrigued me, even as a little girl. And, you know, in those days when our church, the Catholic Church, with its male domination, my brothers could be serving on the altar, but I couldn't because I was a girl. I never understood it. I didn't think it was fair. So I used to play being an altar server at home or a priest. So we'd practice up and down the hall, you know, be giving communion to dolls and things. So there was something in me always that was interested in the beyond something. But of course, at that time, it was not a free kind of institution. And in fact, it seemed to me that if I look at my life now, it seems to have been in two parts, and my religious life in two parts, prior to the 1960s and after the 1960s. And huge changes began happening for me in my understanding, in my living of my faith tradition, and in some of the things that you mentioned that I couldn't take, I couldn't accept, and had to sort of decide, what do I believe? And that still happens today. Many things that we held so strongly in that was before what we call the Vatican Council that you knew about. It was that big change for the Catholic Church when dear old Pope John the 23rd, the big roly-poly Pope, who said it's time to open the windows and let some fresh air blow through this church of ours that had become, you know, stuck in so many ways and possibly still is. And that opened up a whole new way of living my life, my faith, and has continued and still goes on.
So, Margaret, that I mean, this is a big conversation in itself. But I want to ask you that, like, if you go back, was that an exciting time? Was it a scary time, or was it a bit of both? Or
the changes, or the beginnings of religious life? No, I loved them.
The changes.
Yes, they couldn't come fast enough for me, but it wasn't easy because living the kind of religious life I had chosen to live was very structured, and it was very, I suppose, surrounded by all sorts of traditions and practices that had gone on for centuries. And you don't change that overnight, you know, just by saying it will happen. And for living in a community, as I do, people are so different in their understandings of things, in their personalities. And for some people, they found things very difficult to change, to let go of. We had to go through a tremendous amount of discussion, study, transformation, prayer, to try to sort out, well, who are we and how do we respond today to the call that we believe we have to be of service, to be in relationship with God, and for my life within our world today. And so that's still there in many ways. It's never stops, you know.
Yeah.
But thank God, I think, even though we are now coming, I think, to the end of our congregation, we have about 50 members now, just in Parramatta, and we are an ageing group, as most women religious and other religious groups in the church are, except in the Western world anyway. And we are dealing with that, and we have been dealing with it. It's part of it's the mystery of life, you know. You're called in to offer yourself and fully as you can, and then at the time that it's right, you let go. And to me, I think that's where we're at now. And but it's a big job. And yes, dealing with setting the structures that will be needed when we no longer have a leadership team, which we will have to let go of, but we will still have our sisters needing care, and those who are younger who still want to be in ministry, and they must be supported for as long as they can do it and want to do it. So that's where it's at the moment for me in my in my life. It's Sister of Mercy of Parramatta. Mm.
That's a really significant thing, isn't it? It's a
Oh,
real,
yeah.
because it's a death, you know, of something that is precious,
That's right.
and an identity
Yeah. Mm.
people have dedicated their life to, and then it's like, well, it's not got life and vitality in the same way.
No.
So what do we do?
Yes, it doesn't have numbers and strength and all of that. There is still life. It's an amazing thing, really. How in the last chapter there, which we've been having every 6 years, where you look at all your life and you make the change in history, the number, even the sisters who are infirm are still involved, as they see it, in their mission, in our ministry, whether it's by prayer or by simple things of kindness and so on. Those who are a bit more involved externally still want to do it, and they're still doing it. So it's a beautiful, I think, acknowledgement that while physically our bodies may not be strong and powerful, like we used to be a powerful institution in the church and recognised as such, there's a humility that's needed now, and that allows God to move, I think, in a very significant way, and to trust in all will be well. All will be, as Julian of Norwich said, I think, all will be well. Don't haste, don't think. All will be well. Mm.
Yeah.
And it's not up to me, you know. It's in God, really. Mm. So
that is a great relief, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I wouldn't say it's easy. You know, life is precious and I want to go on forever, but I know I can't. And
Can I ask you how old you are now, Margaret?
82.
82.
Mm.
Fairly, you know, sprightly and
well, I think that's why I got elected. My brain's still working, my body's holding up. So they just did it. I said, well, I am open and I am happy to offer anything I can if you feel that that's what is possible. And they voted for it. So I said, all right, thy will be done, sort of thing.
Yeah. And are you seeing any new novitiates? Are there any new ones coming?
Not really, not in the Western world, no. I think there are a number in the two-thirds world, as I prefer to call it. But I think everything has a time. You know, our community was brought into being when there was such a need for that. When we began in Ireland, the poverty, the dispossession, the danger to women, particularly. That's why our group started with Catherine McCorney. And, you know, it's been the history right throughout the whole of Christendom, from the earliest monastics. They lived and worked and then they died out, and others arose and came and died out. It's been the whole process. And this is the same thing happening in I think this kind of religious life has had its time. It's done a magnificent job, particularly for, as we know, the Catholics in Australia who had very little to begin with, including education, and we were brought out to provide it. And that was what my main ministry was, and I loved it, every minute of it. But then, after all the changes and so on, and we saw we needed to move into other ministries rather than the institution of education, because there are other people who could take on those leaderships of schools and teaching and so on, and we needed to go to other areas of need. So that's what we did. So, you know, it's been like a cycle, and it will always be a cycle, I think, of God's action in various people who are doing marvellous things outside religious life, doing one like yourself, you know, carrying on the spiritual life in your way, and it's good. And yeah. So it doesn't depend on us anymore, but we'll do it to the very end, actually.
So You just answered beautifully my second question. So I'm jumping into my third and then we'll circle back. Yeah. So over the decades of service, what key aspect of your faith has been a constant source of strength? And how has it guided you through moments of doubt, challenge, or change? And so then this, I guess, comes into many of the things you just talked about in your relationship with God and the letting go. But perhaps you can go even further. There must have been moments of significant, crisis of faith or doubts.
Yeah.
Or were there?
I'm not sure that I ever doubted in my faith the reality of the divine, as I call it, or mystery. I've never really. What I did doubt was the way it was being expressed or lived in many ways, but I don't think it ever took it away from me. But there were challenges and there were things that I found very hard and difficult in relationships within the community, things that you found you were doing and it wasn't successful. Failure is always a wonderful way to remember that you need something more than just your own ego. And I think, fortunately, there was always someone there within the community who could lift you up. You know, I had wonderful and still have beautiful friends and friendships, and that has kept me going at times too. And you kind of we were in it together, you know, and I think that was the community aspect, I think, was important to me. Although sometimes I could have killed some of them.
I was just going to say, it's great and it can drive you bonkers.
Yeah, bunches of women together, Lord. So that's what community is meant to be. It's just not what I want, you know. It's trying to respond in love and kindness while still having, you know, the right and the necessity to speak up, you know, when you felt it was necessary. So, so I've learned much, and I've just realised, you know, that how little I know and how ordinary I am, you know, but it's been good.
Yeah. And I want to ask you to open up a little bit, if you don't mind, because, you know, you just said to be able to speak up and say what is true for you. And I know that in these decades you've, and since 1960, and, you know, as you said, back in the early days of being in the hall pretending to give communion, well, you've also challenged some of those in your living, in your doing and living. You've challenged some of those boundaries, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right.
And so talk a little about that and the courage, I would imagine, to stand and shatter the wall.
Yes. Well, you know, I think, pardon me, I think something that we have had to come to terms and to learn, and I'm still trying to come to terms with this, that ultimately it is about our humanity. I mean, we've been created human, and that wonderful writer, you know, mystic Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, whom I think has just made some huge moves into understanding our universe and our place in it. He said once, I was reading, and it struck me very much, he said, "You are not a human being in search of a spiritual life. You are a spiritual being immersed in the human experience." And it seems to me, if anything Jesus was on about, it was about being human with its wonders and its faults and failings, and all of it is all right. All of it, God is within, like Pia was saying. That's my new grappling now with the notion of the divine in everything. And it seems to me that things I saw happening, sometimes when I was teaching with with families, practices that the church put on people that were inhuman, and I did not accept them, and I couldn't accept them. And, you know, trying to offer to people another way of understanding this unconditional love of God, no matter what happened in their lives, was very important, and I loved doing it. I did, you know, speak at public things sometimes, even within our own community. I spoke up and said, I think it's not right. And things, terrible, silly practices that we had, you know, like sisters not being able to go to their parents' requiems or their sisters' weddings, just cutting you off from being human. That had to change. And they were the things that I found so hard to do. And yet, on the other hand, I just loved so much of the life in terms of the spiritual, you know, the music and the chapel and all of those things were just, they kept me going, I think, and my friends and spiritual directors that I've had. So that's where, when I then, my big breakthrough into trying to see a different way of knowing God, that's just been continuing and becomes more marvelous. The less I know, the more I find wonderful.
Yeah, right. And I think that's probably why you're still bright and alive and dynamic and got a good brain, because you keep exploring and discovering. Right. It's not like there's no end point, like we know.
Right. Yes,
yeah.
That was the actual reason I called my work I did when I came back from overseas, Life Quest. I saw it as a journey into freedom and compassion. Those two things are so important I think, in any person's life, to be free, to be your true self without illusion, without, you know, to be real in that sense, but compassion always for yourself and for others.
Yeah.
And I'd say there's a similarity with Pia's understanding of it there as well.
Yeah.
So it's the same God, isn't it, or the divine, whatever. And in our tradition, as we follow what Jesus told us, that's ultimately why he came, to tell us about this amazing God. It was not about a cruel ogre waiting to punish, which unfortunately is still the way it's often seen.
Yeah.
But an unconditional, loving reality. And in the centre of everything that exists, not separate from.
Yeah.
So that's where I find my faith today, trying to grapple with that and enjoy it, be free in it.
Right. Margaret,
so,
that kind of brought us to our time. I'm going to come back to you after our next, but I've got these questions that I ask the others. So do you have a favourite daily ritual?
Well, it certainly is. It's my reflection of a morning, always, in silence, in quiet. And I don't know whether I mentioned it to you or to someone else, that there are fewer and fewer words. I might use a little passage from some book that I'm reading, or sometimes scripture, not always, to sort of stimulate a further thing. But basically, I think I'm just trying to be quiet, still, and just be open to whatever happens in prayer, you know, or reflection. That's what I do. Yeah, that's pretty every day. And then, of course, in the community, we have all sorts of things that, you know, rituals and practices and so on, which are lovely because we do them ourselves. We're not dependent on Father. That's I naughty.
Yay. Okay, so could you recommend a book that has significantly influenced your spiritual journey?
Oh, there's so many. But when you asked me that, one jumped into my mind straight away, and it was a much earlier time, and it was called Jesus Before Christianity. It's by Albert Nolan, and it actually blew open a whole new understanding of what he was on about and what we should be on about. And it's for me, it's a world changer. It changed my it began changing. And I think that was in the 70s I first read that. And it's been reprinted and reprinted. He's a South African Dominican, and he experienced the dreadful apartheids and things like that. But he actually showed us that he wanted to write this book to talk about Jesus before Christians got hold of him. Turning into something he probably wasn't.
That's wonderful, wonderful. So I'm going to ask you, can you share a moment during your journey that has unexpectedly brought you immense joy?
Well, there are a lot of those as well in relationships and so on. But I think probably the experience overseas in study, there were moments there that broke through. They were aha moments. And I thought, oh, I didn't know this. This is amazing, that kind of thing.
Learning, really.
Learning and being open to it. And then the first time I did the cosmic walk, that actually gives you the actual bodily, try to understand the bodily, in a bodily way, that is walking it, from the Big Bang to now, that 14 billion years of God's action that I am part of, and everything that exists is that moment of doing that I'd had no idea of this. That has been the big breakthrough for me in my life, and still is.
Sounds quite similar to Pia. Quite a similar moment. And finally, if you could share one piece of advice with other individuals who may be aspiring to a life of service and spirituality, and what would it be?
I think it's important to know what your passion is for your own self-development and beyond. Something that pulls you out of yourself to others. And then I think you need a very good guide to advise, because we can be, as I said, we can have some illusions sometimes that are not real. We have to be real, I think, about ourselves as far as we can be, and then be open to something beyond that. And that's what I would suggest to a young person or anyone, to continue to explore, to try to be free within it. But what are you passionate for in terms of a spiritual life? So that's what I think I'd say.
Great. Margaret, thank you. We're about to swing over to Costa Rica, and we're coming back to Oatlands after that. Really, I'm loving being with you. Thank you so much. Yeah, really.
Adult to adult. Very good.
Yeah. So see you after Marianne.
Right. So I stop my video?
Yeah, that'd be great. Video and audio. Thank you. Okay, so as I say, we're going to head over to Costa Rica. And Marianne is Brahma Kumari's dedicated sister, and her journey is very interesting as well. And I don't really need to introduce so much, because in the video, in the pre-record, you're going to find out about her. And so all I can say is enjoy, as much as I'm sure you've already enjoyed listening and being with Margaret and Pia, Marianne Lizana, who's the coordinator in Costa Rica. So welcome, Marianne. It's lovely to have you here with us on Youniverse. And even though this is pre-recording, it's very nice to know that at 2:00 in the morning, your time, you'll be sleeping, but we'll be with you. So, yeah, welcome. Marianne is from Costa Rica, and she's the coordinator of the Brahma Kumari's organization over there. And tonight, as we know, we're talking about nuns. And there was a very interesting book called If Nuns Ruled the World. And it was written by a journalist called Jo Piazza. And she talked about 10 passionate women who are leading lives that, I think she was mainly talking about Catholic nuns. But in this conversation that we're doing today, and we've spoken with Pia Giammasi, who is an Italian-American living in Taiwan, and she doesn't use the word nun. She's been more of a monastic, and now she leads her Dharma life outside of the institution. But we're talking with Margaret Hinchey, who's also a Catholic nun and was my school principal when I was in primary school. And then Marianne. And in Brahma Kumaris, you don't say nun, right? We don't say that we're nuns, but let's have a look at this exploration today. And I've got some questions for you. So the first one, welcome, Marianne.
Thank you, Carol. It's beautiful. One of my best friends is a Catholic nun, and we had this kind of chats, conversations sometimes, and it's beautiful topic. So thank you.
Great, good. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and the first one is that the Brahma Kumaris emphasize the soul's true nature beyond physical identity. And how has this philosophy shaped your understanding of self? And how might it resonate with women who are seeking a sense of purpose and identity today? And you've worked with a lot of women, so yeah.
Yeah, and even from, I don't know why, from even childhood or when I was teenager, I was always feeling not very happy with these stereotypes. And with my brother, we always were competing with one another, and who is stronger, who can do more, because in that age, you learn a lot of stereotypes. Mm. And my feeling was that I had to fight against them. And so I was not really happy with the life. And looking at the reality of the world, I felt that was not fair. There was a lot of injustice against women because of these stereotypes that what you cannot do and what you can do or you must do, no? So when I came to realize about the self beyond those stereotypes, just the essence of the self, and even beyond all the gender conditioning, it gave me a lot of freedom just to be myself. Mm-hmm. And even the freedom to understand better who I am without fighting against anyone, because that was tiring too. And I used to work with women that were abused. So I used to even have dreams about protecting them. And sometimes I had these feelings against the kind of the persons that are aggressive.
Yeah, the perpetrators.
Yeah. But then it's not going to end unless we are going beyond those stereotypes, beyond those limitations. We must, all of us, go back to the self, where we can be very pure, not rejecting, not criticizing, just understanding better the qualities, the strength, the capacities of each one beyond anything else.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to go into another question now, and if we've got time, I might come back to something about the first one. But you're not what might be called a typical nun, right? Yet your life is one of spiritual service and dedicated to God or Supreme or Source. How old were you when you began this life, and why? What was it that called you to this kind of way of living?
Well, I think that each one of us has its own call, no? But I grew up with non-religion. My parents said to me that they will not believe in God anymore. But if I had a choice, if I want to go to some kind of church, they will allow me, but they will not teach me that. So I grew up with this feeling that God is there. I don't know how, but I just knew. And then I learned about God from different friends. And I used to work when I was in high school. So I took some times when it was holidays to work, and I met a missionary, the ones who go to missions. And I love to listen their stories and how they surrendered their life to God, to serve, to help other people to connect with God, you know. And I was interested in those things. So I was always kind of looking for a connection and understanding about the spirituality, but mostly the connection with God. And once my friends started to do the communion, you know, in the Catholic Church, and my parents, they didn't put me into any kind of
none of the sacraments. You didn't go through. Yeah.
I didn't know how was all of that. But they told me, my friends, I once went with them to the church, that what they ate, what they put in their mouth, is kind of is something that you feel that God is inside of you. So I was so excited to experience that. So once I went by myself, and I decided that I will do it. So I went there, I had that experience, and when they give me that, I really felt that I want this connection with God. So I had the experience of connection with God. But I was innocent. I didn't know anything about procedures, the proper procedures. So when I went back to my home and I explained to my mom what I did, she was very strict with me, because she said that it's not respectful, because you have to go through all these procedures and you cannot do like that. So I felt bad that why with God you need so much bureaucracy. I always wanted a connection, direct connection. And then I feel that there are times in the humanity, in the human life, and in the cycle of life of humanity, that the connection with God is very, very important. And for me, when I was teenager, I came to this path when I was 19. Gave me a lot of hope, understanding about reality, and the connection with God that I was looking for. I used to have a lot of experiences, and I'm still now feeling more natural, that connection. But I decided to dedicate, because I knew that this life for me is for service. And the service I want to do requires all my attention. So I want to cultivate that. Even though I work, and I still feel that is for God. It's not that I'm working separate of my spiritual life. It's all part of the same.
Yeah, beautiful. And when you say it's for God, what do you mean by that?
By that, I mean that all the desires, for example, I used to have a boyfriend before. And then when it comes to the time, to the moment to decide if you want to follow more with him and to get married, then I realized it was not the life I want. It's like sometimes you surrender your life to children, you surrender your life to husband, you surrender your life to a cause. I wanted to surrender my life to God and to do what had to be done in these times. So it's what I realized in that moment that was what I wanted.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. And our final question is, the Brahma Kumaris promote a strong sense of like spiritual sisterhood. It's an organization led by women, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit. Your service and professional work have often found you supporting girls and women, and often in very difficult situations, right? Can you share how the presence of this sisterhood, the sacred feminine principle, has empowered you and others in difficult times or situations? It's a kind of question, but yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, in this world, normally women fight against each other in order to have the attention, for example, of the boss, or, because we have to look good for the other, and especially if it's a man, and we compete. But what I feel is that when we are beyond that, I realize that I can feel more the sisterhood when I'm more in that awareness of the soul, of being the soul, being beyond that, and understanding and have put myself in the shoes of the women that is surviving situations that I cannot imagine, because I work with people that have been sexually exploited or abused or, assaulted. And there is a lot of pain there. And so what I feel is to understand the strength that soul have to deal with all of that, allow me to be closer, and now to be closer to others, even other women. And in this institution, this thing of being together as sisters have helped me to be to understand better how to make changes with non-violence from inside out, with this empathy. And I will give you an example. I was working a lot, doing a lot of things in Brahma Kumaris and in the job, and I suddenly got a lot of sick. I was very sick. And one of those sisters from other countries, she wanted to empower me. She wanted to help. So she was aware what I was feeling, and she was very busy too, but she took the time and told me, when you come to this country, you come to my place. I will do something for you. She invited me, and I didn't realize that she was inviting me to rest. And she supported me a lot. She celebrated my birthday. She was very aware that what I was needing in that moment was just that. And we had a wonderful time. And when I came back to the country, I had another kind of energy, and so I could trust her, even though I was not telling her how I was feeling, physically. I didn't even realize that I was not feeling okay. She was aware. And then this kind of help that we give to each other, to put each other in front, is what I have felt. A network of support is what I feel right now. The sisterhood is where you know that you always can have someone by your side when you need.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's also very different from what you explained in the beginning about this kind of world of scarcity where women feel there's little opportunity in the old systems, and so they tend to fight and compete for few opportunities. But when there's this sense of everyone in their own speciality, or you, I mean, I love to see that you're doing what you're doing and doing it so brilliantly. It doesn't make me threatened or jealous or like I don't get a chance. No, it reminds me I have the same chance. I need, I've got specialities and I should use those as well. So it's a very different thing, isn't it? It's an unlimited space of possibility and support.
That's true. And it's so interesting that when we are looking at the specialities in that sense, we naturally use the power of love that it's supposed that we have, like the women have always the power of love. But now with this feeling of sisterhood, I feel that there is a real power in loving each other instead of competing, or it's creating environments when there are environments where you feel that appreciation or understanding, or you can grow. But in environments where there is competition or jealousy, you just feel that you cannot express yourself. So that's what I have experienced in moments of crisis.
Thank you. Okay, so that's the end of our 3 questions for you. And these are 4 questions that I've asked the others as well. So do you have a favorite daily ritual? What is the one daily ritual or practice that brings you the most peace and connection?
Is waking up very early in the morning, 3:30, and just be in silence and in connection with God.
Okay. Could you recommend a book that has significantly influenced your spiritual journey?
Once I did a personal retreat with this book of Eastern Mind for Western, from Anthony Strano.
Eastern Mind for Western, I don't know, Eastern something for Western minds?
Yes, like that. Well, it's Anthony Strano, and it's a book about why is silence important? Why meditation? So how we can go deep in that experience, and that have helped me a lot in this path.
Great. And I think it's available through Eternity Inc., which also sponsors Youniverse. So let's see. Now, can you share a moment during your journey that unexpectedly brought you immense joy?
Well, it's brief, but once I wanted to go to India, and I didn't have money. So I went to US for work, work and travel program. And I worked so hard, but I didn't know that amount of money allowed me to go to India. And when I went with another friend, and the friend, when she counted the money, it wasn't enough. She was not having the same aim to go to India, but I needed certain amount. And when I count the money I did, it was just enough to go to India. And I was so happy that I was able to do it. I put all my effort, and I was suddenly so happy. So I'm sure whenever we have a pure desire and we do a little bit extra, it's going to be fulfilled.
Great. Thank you. Now, do you have one piece of advice that you could share with individuals aspiring to a life of spiritual service and dedication? What would it be if you had one piece of advice?
I would say that it has to be lived in a natural way, and that each one of us has our own personal and intimate connection with God, and that we don't have to prove or to compete or just, it has to be very natural. If not, if we are imposing things to ourselves, it's not going to work. We have to enjoy the spiritual life. That was something that I learned, and doing things from that space, not from the space of duty, but the space of love.
Beautiful. Now, would you like to take us into, we're closed now, and take us in through an experience of this connection, or wherever you want to take us, really? That would be lovely. A few minutes.
And thank you, Caroline. What you're doing is so beautiful. It's inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being available, Marianne. Yeah, beautiful.
So I will suggest first to relax, to allow your body to feel comfortable, and imagine an inner sacred space where you are secure, safe, where you don't have anything to do, nothing to resolve, you can just connect with yourself. Imagine that you connect with a part of yourself that is very innocent, that is full of purity, joy. That part of you that has no fear. That sacred part of you that is divine. Just feel that you originally are that innocent soul or being. Embraced by an eternal love from the source. You will always be embraced by this love that comes from that pure source of love. The Father, the Son of wisdom, and I have the right to feel this love. I accept this love is for me. Dissolving any kind of pain in my heart. Enjoying feeling a deep connection with this sweet source of love. Om Shanti.
Marianne, thank you. That was just gorgeous. I really was able to very easily find my way there. So I hope all the others who are listening and with us today could touch that space too. Really appreciate your being with us, making the time, and that we could work it out so you could.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And lots of love for all of you who are looking this at this time.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. Right. So we are coming to the end. And I have to say that I can imagine if the world was ruled, would be collaboratively kind of held by these amazing women, it would certainly be a different place than what we're currently living in. So I'm inspired, really inspired. So I just want to bring Margaret in for the last couple of minutes as we say goodbye. Margaret, do you have anything that you'd like to reflect as we wrap up from what Marianne said, or Pia, or where we sit now?
I love the way Marianne brought a word I don't think I used. I may have, and that was love. And it seems to me that while our understanding of love can be so, superficial, that I think the love she's talking about and the love we're talking about and the essence of our lives and the mystery of the divine, it is love.
Yeah.
And I thought that was beautiful to have that a reminder that what we do and who we are is because of love.
Yes.
That's my last thought.
Thank you. You did mention it. You
I?
mentioned about the unconditional love, because in the contrast of the terrible thing that had been set up in history. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Margaret, we're going to close now. Thank you so much. Would you like to close us out with a very brief offering of some prayer that's close to your heart? Or you can make it up.
I did bring one because I find now, in my trying to understand now this evolutionary God history, is one that I'm using quite a bit. And I think it's because basically, I think now we don't know who or what that source is, that mystery. We're in unknowing, but we have to use words, we have to use imagery, we have to use something to help us to. And so I find this book I've used a lot, actually, called Prayers to an Evolutionary God. And one of them in particular I love using because it uses metaphors or names that for God, for the divine, that I like. And it just expands my mind, because I think if we keep using the same word, God, my Father, that's what you ultimately end up thinking about. And it's not. Whatever this divine is, it's not a man in the sky.
No, it's not.
No. So if it's all right, I'd love to finish my offering to you this way, and trying to live this myself.
Thank you so much, Margaret. Yes, please.
Boundless sea of love and energy, our future and our God, may all your dreams for us come true, your steady mother-like imaginings and your fatherly hopes, your creative purposes evident everywhere in the world. Guide us to our truest selves. co-creators with you of this environment. Persuade us to be worthy inheritors of the astonishing, evolving reality in which we live. Appreciators of the daytime in all its colours and aromas, admirers of the heavens at night, reverent caretakers of our generous green earth, respectful of everything alive, especially of our fellow humans in all their bewildering diversity and beauty. May it be so.
Mm.
Thank you.
Margaret, I love that. Thank you. What is the name of the book? Prayers to an Evolutionary
Prayers
God?
of Evolutionary God, yes. The prayers of intimacy, prayers of questioning, prayers of ambiguity, but using broad understandings. Not limiting God.
More the mystical journey, the mystic.
That's right. The connection of everything
Yes.
to everything.
Margaret, thank you. Thank you so
Carolyn.
much. For
thank
here.
you, Carolyn and Pia,
live.
if she's still there. And this was a lovely opportunity to share. And as I always find, sharing with other adults who are in this journey, there's always something beautiful that comes from it and gives and inspires you to keep going, to keep on this journey. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm very, very re-inspired, very much so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you to everyone who's with us here tonight and who's watching in the replays. And I look forward to seeing you again sometime. Thank you for joining us tonight. Gabrielle will be back next month and with another session of Youniverse. Have a lovely month ahead. And that's it. And of course, the book that Marianne was talking about is available at Eternity Inc. and it's called Eastern Wisdom for Western Mind.